I had the pleasure of being inside Armstrong, and I watched Medvedev Bonzi from first ball to last. I will never forget that match, and there's no way I'm waiting until Tuesday to talk about it. So let's get into it. Benjamin Bonzi defeats Daniil Medvedev at 2 consecutive majors. Did it at Wimbledon, 4 sets, 6-2 in the 4th. Does it at the US Open, 6-4 in the 5th in an up and down match, which looked like it was going to be a straight set win for Bonzi before the unthinkable happened. I'll get into that in a moment. One thing, though, about the Wimbledon match that I think is very relevant, gives you a window into just how painful this loss would be for Medvedev and just how, well, potentially satisfying the win would be for Bonzi. Remember what Medvedev said after losing to Bonzi at Wimbledon? Well, first he said during the match on the court, it was picked up by microphones. He said, referring to Bonzi, why not play like this every day? Win millions. Be rich. No, he decides to do it once a year. He then said in the post-match press conference that he was surprised by Bonzi's level, that he's seen Bonzi play in the past, and he hasn't played nearly that well, implying that it was this once-in-a-lifetime, out-of-this-world performance by Bonzi that was essentially fluky. That falls apart. That falls apart when he's now lost twice in a row in best out of 5. And that's part of why it will sting. This loss will sting. This will cut deep for Daniil Medvedev. Also, majors this year, second round Australian Open, first round at Roland Garros, first round at Wimbledon, first round at the US Open. Just an unprecedented struggle bus for Daniil Medvedev at the majors this year. Let's get into the match. I have no interest in beating a dead horse about all of the reasons why Daniil Medvedev has not been as successful in 2025. So I'll tell you the main thing that struck me about this match, at least through 2 sets and 5-4 Bonzi serving for it. It is the inconsistency, the amount of mistakes that Medvedev was making, the rally ball errors, the missed returns on big points. A guy who in his prime, I literally think, was the best returns in play guy of all time. Not the best returner of all time, don't get me wrong. I mean, the fact that Daniil was standing on the back fence to do it opened up a lot of options for opponents in terms of the +1 and different ways to attack it. So not the best returner of all time. But in terms of getting the serve back in the court, I think in his prime, best ever. He missed so many big returns. He had no trust in his second serve. His second serve was a huge issue, at least in the first 2 sets. It actually got better as the match went on. His first serve was inconsistent. It was not consistently impactful. But the consistency in the baseline rallies, the fact that it was so tilted towards Bonzi, I mean, that's what was really, really striking. Because, again, it's Medvedev. He doesn't miss returns. He doesn't make mistakes. That is what makes him a top 3 player when he was a top 3 player. That's gone right now. Bonzi served for this match at 5-4 in the 3rd, and he had not been broken the entire match. And it was match point, and he missed his first serve, and out comes the photographer. Out comes the photographer. He's a still photographer. And Greg Allensworth says, at first, he says, "Go quickly, stop, get off the court." Like he's yelling in between Bonzi's first and second serve. And then he calls a let. He says first serve. So let's start with the merits of this call. This, in terms of the rule book, is up to the umpire. This is a judgment call. If there is a if there is a disruption between first and second serve, depending on the severity of the disruption, the umpire may award a first serve. So that's the rule book. Was the judgment a good judgment? Well, in 2020 hindsight, like if you could replay that situation, maybe Allensworth could have tried to take cues from Bonzi a little bit and see how disruptive it was. But honestly, yeah, like that's a fair let call. Somebody ran onto the court between first and second serve. That is a fair let call. That is a real distraction that is out of the player's control. And I don't have a huge issue with the let call, but when it happened, I knew right away Medvedev's going to go berserk. Daniil's going to go nuts. Look, tennis players, a lot is dictated by the scoreboard. A lot. If Medvedev was winning, if Medvedev was in a good mood, it doesn't matter that there's a let. He wouldn't have cared. Like, so much is driven. I'll give you a little story. Like, I was commentating at the Sumter Challenger last week, 2 weeks ago, week before the U.S. Open, and my commentary position was very close to the court. Very close. I don't like to be that close because I don't want the players to hear my commentary, but at times it's unavoidable. There were 2 times all week where players turned around and complained. One time to the chair umpire, one time Dan Evans turned around and just gave me a this to keep it down, right? Both times were the same thing. The player was on my side of the court, and their opponent, in Dan Evans' case, broke at love to serve for a set. And in Jaime Faria's case, and by the way, I don't blame the players at all, just so you know, I completely sympathize with them. In Jaime Faria's case, a young wild card outside the top 800 ended up converting a set point in the first on a beautiful forehand down the line passing shot. So essentially both moments where I was going to get excited about what I just saw unfold on the court. And those were the only 2 moments all week long that players were like, hey, this is annoying. I can hear the commentator. It's no coincidence that on both occasions, it was when something painful happened to them in the match so that they found something to be upset about and complain about, right? And this is the same thing. The scoreboard dictates so much. And of course, Medvedev was going to just lose it. It doesn't mean that he was right. It does not mean that the call from Allensworth was wrong. But I do think that there have been a bunch of incidents with Greg Allensworth. In many cases, by the rules, he's actually on the correct side of things, like based on the rules. He now has a reputation, and players use that against him. They hold that against him. It's a tough position for Allensworth to be. I do kind of feel for him. Like the Opelka incident, for example, in Dallas, which started this, and Medvedev referred to it. Opelka told the fan to, he cursed at the fan, he yelled obscenities at the fan. Of course, that's a code violation. What? That's a clear code violation. Every day of the week. And Riley goes off on him and says he's the worst umpire in the world. Allensworth is right. I'm sorry, he's right. All right, so we've gotten kind of off track. Medvedev goes to Allensworth and just loses his shit. And Allensworth doesn't give him a code, by the way. I think he doesn't want things to escalate. It was too late for that. But at this point, Daniil is beginning to actively egg on the crowd. He's booing. Daniil is booing. The crowd is booing. And there's a period of, I'm going to approximate here, 2 minutes, where Medvedev is rousing the crowd. And then at a certain point, Medvedev says, all right, enough. Let's play. Quiet down. And he's starting to conduct the orchestra, or he's trying to de-escalate, but things are just too charged up at this point in time. And whenever Bonzi walks up to the baseline and there's not silence, he then walks away from the baseline. And this dance continues for about 3 minutes. Now look, Benjamin Bonzi at this point is the clear victim in the situation. Overall, the still photographer walked on the court. Now the crowd is going nuts. There's been a huge disruption. Let's not get it twisted. Bonzi's the victim here. However, in this situation, maybe this is easier said than done. I will admit, I've never been out on the court, but I have seen other players handle the situation this way. First thing that comes to mind, Joao Fonseca in Buenos Aires in front of these completely unruly, unhinged crowds. How did he handle it? What's the best way to get a crowd to be quiet? Serve. Toss the ball up, bounce the ball, toss the ball up. When you toss the ball up, they will hush. That's what will happen. I guarantee it. But until that point, you're not going to get Wimbledon silence in a moment like that inside Louis Armstrong Stadium, which just is typically, by the way, and even when it comes to the acoustics, it's the loudest tennis stadium in the world. I don't mean when the crowd cheers. I mean at all times. It is it's never quiet in there. And Bonzi talked about how that bothered him because he couldn't hear the ball coming off the strings of the other side. I've spent so much time in that stadium for the last 5 years. This is constant. This is the consistent complaint when it comes to Armstrong. So anyway, Bonzi, if he just served, everybody would have shut up. But instead, there was a delay for 6 minutes. He missed his first serve. The crowd went crazy. Second serve, match point. Medvedev wins a rally. And Bonzi's tight. He's not swinging the racket the same way that he was swinging the racket all match long. And what ended up happening here, he had far too long to think about the situation. Probably feel sorry for himself about the situation, understandably. This whole incident nearly changed the result of the match. Because a still photographer ran onto the court between first and second serve, and Allensworth made a let call that was borderline but probably fair, and Medvedev saw an opportunity to cause a disruption. Now, I don't think that this was super calculated, because if you saw how rageful Daniil was, well, nothing seemed extremely calculated in that moment for a guy who was just going off the handle, crashing out. So I'm not going to say that this was all about tactics, but I think subconsciously Daniil knew what he was doing, causing a disruption in that moment, creating a hostile environment for his opponent in that moment, which, by the way, turned the other way. And the Bonzi support ended up being really vocal for portions of the second half of the match. Understandably so. I think it was just, it ended up being just a very vocal crowd on both ends. 50-50, basically. But anyway, let's address Medvedev's behavior. Let's call a spade a spade. Daniil, and not the first time, he has a major anger issue on the court. I mean, he does things in moments of rage that are obviously classless. And the behavior was not exemplary last night. But it almost won him the match. So look, I always have the same stance on gamesmanship. Fans can decide what they think. I'll call it what it is. Which is poor behavior on the court, gamesmanship, causing a disruption intentionally, although the opening to do so was not Medvedev's doing. Right? So I'll call it what it is, and then you guys can decide what you think about it. If you look at demeanor, Bonzi kept very calm. But calm doesn't mean that he was basically unaffected by it mentally. Because in reality, he was thinking too much at that point. He had too much time to think. He was overwhelmed by the energy of the crowd at that point, and he started playing very tight. He got broken for the first time all match. Medvedev wins the third set. Bonzi gets off to a slow start in the fourth and then ends up feeling it in his legs. And I don't know if it was an injury or fatigue, but Bonzi was in horrible shape. And by the time he goes down, 2-love in the fourth set, he's barely playing. And for a moment there, I thought we might see a retirement. 6-love fourth set for Medvedev. In the fifth set, Bonzi gave it more of a push energy-wise, which would be expected. And he started moving better. Absolutely. In the rallies, he started moving better. Still couldn't serve. Benjamin Bonzi beat Daniil Medvedev in this fifth set without hitting a first serve that topped 105 miles per hour. That's not an official stat, but I had my eye on the radar gun throughout Bonzi's service games. He was serving, first serves came in at 100. He had no first serve. And Medvedev still couldn't break him. He tried to go lockdown mode, actually. I mentioned for most of the match, it was actually a pretty aggressive Daniil who was just making a lot of errors. In the fifth set, when he realized that Bonzi was compromised, he did get more passive. And credit to Bonzi, he won rally after rally after rally in his service games, taking it to Medvedev and finding a way through his defense. Because Medvedev was trying to go shock absorber mode, and Bonzi answered the bell when Medvedev got a bit more consistent. Now, I would argue that Medvedev's ball, when he goes lockdown mode, does not have the quality that it needs to have compared to what it used to be when Daniil decided he wasn't going to miss. And that's just a confidence thing, a confidence in Medvedev's ability to hit unattackable rally balls without missing. That isn't there at the moment. But when Medvedev was putting the ball in the middle of the court and not achieving the depth that he needed to, Bonzi did a great job delivering off of both wings with good aggressive ball striking, which is his strength. I think he hugs the baseline well. He changes direction off of both wings well, especially the backhand is flat and penetrating. The forehand has the requisite weight of shot especially when he's up on the baseline to hit through Medvedev, and that's what he did. And then Daniil at 4-5, his hand started cramping, and his serve got broken, and that was the match. Is this a Bonzi story? I don't know. I mean, at Wimbledon, he beat Medvedev and he lost the next match against Jordan Thompson. He is now 11-16 on the season, but in Cincinnati, heck of a run, beating Arnaldi, Musetti, Tsitsipas, all in 3 sets before losing to Auger-Aliassime in the fourth round. So look, Bonzi coming up on his career high ranking 42. Maybe there's something going there. But on the Medvedev side of things, let me end on this. I don't know what he's really good at right now. What is he doing at a high level, at a top 10 level? Serving? No. Grinding from the baseline? No, not right now. Attacking off the ground? No. Like, I don't know what aspect of his game is working. And that's why we've seen the results go downhill. Does he need to take a break? Only he can answer that question. Mentally, is it so hard right now that he needs to take a break? I hope that he'll think about it, consider it. I'm curious about the coaching situation. Is that an area where he looks to just make a change? But I've always felt it's such a solid partnership between him and Gilles Servara. So we'll have to see what Daniil does. This was a wild, wild night on Armstrong. How about that for a day one, first Sunday start at the U.S. Open? Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.